Good morning, good afternoon, good day, everybody. Today we are going to talk about hypothesis, which is in the lesson 7 of your PR2 module. We are going to talk about hypothesis because this is going to be a very important component of your research. This is going to be part of your chapter 1 on your presentation of your research. So let's go straight away to the discussion of hypothesis. And as you can see, I am not showing my face at all, unlike in the other videos that I have shared with you, that I always let my face or my body appear on the video, but this time it's going to be different, to give way and to give more focus on the discussion. All right. So hypothesis. A hypothesis is a tentative explanation or an answer to a question about variables, their relationships, and other facts involved in the research. So take note of the word tentative. When we talk about tentative, it means that it's not certain. It's uncertain. Right? So hindi siya sigurado. So basically, a hypothesis is just a guess or a hula. Alright? A hula na explanation or an answer to the question of your research. Alright? So, on this way, though ginahatagan dayon answer, though ginahatagan dayon result ang imo nga research. But it is just a guess. Okay? Hula lang siya. And the hypothesis is there to explain. Alright? And the hypothesis is there for you to have a test, for you to prove the hypothesis to be true or not. Alright? If your research is about the effectivity, example, imo research is about the effectivity of online class in delivering maritime subjects, right? Amo na abi imong study, effectivity of online class in delivering maritime subjects. Then you can have a hypothesis that could go this way. Online class is not effective in delivering maritime subjects. Alright? So, amo na imo hypothesis. Usually, class, ang hypothesis is the opposite of the desired, alright? Or ang positive nga outcome sang imo nga study. Alright? Diba? If your study is about the effectivity of online class in delivering maritime subjects, you will have in mind the desired result to be positive, that it is really effective. Diba? However, a hypothesis could actually be the opposite of what is the desired result. It could be the negative one. Right? So you can say in your hypothesis that online class is not effective in delivering maritime subjects. Is not effective. So it is just a guess. Right? Hula mo lang siya. Alright? So that's why it is a hypothesis. And your hypothesis is there to make you test it, and prove it to be the opposite of it. Alright? Hypothesis. A research always ends up with a result, right? However, you are free to hypothesize, alright? Meaning, what does it mean? To infer, alright? So, ano to infer? To think about it deeply, alright? or to understand it better, to propose or guess about factual things related to the research. Take note that hypothesis is an inferential thinking, right? So when we talk about inferential thinking, it means that you are thinking something about your study, all right, based on certain things, right? Based on variables, based on facts, based on certain matters about your study, right? That makes you guess something based not only on whatever experience or factual knowledge you have about such things, but also on conclusions that were logically drawn by other research studies, right? So your research, for example, ang imong study could actually be could have been studied before. However, do lain lang ang imo nga gin-atake or lain lang ang perspective ang gin-atake mo bisa research mo, for example. So, it means na na-touch naman na sang iban nga mga researches that came before yours, before your own research. Alright? So, it means yung makakuha ka na dito idea of what is the possible result of your research. Okay? That's why you are able to hypothesize. You're able to guess. You're able to propose. You're able to infer. Alright? Makahula ikaw. Alright? So, amo ng hypothesis. Hypothesis has to be tested through analytical investigation to prove how true or false it is. So you have your own hypothesis and you will conduct your research to prove your hypothesis to be true or false. Alright? So amo nang ginahambal naton class nga analytical investigation. Alright? It is what we call analytical investigation since it has a process. It is systematic. It is scientific. Diba mo na ang research? To prove your claim. To prove if your hypothesis is true or false. What are the purposes of hypothesis? Right? Hypothesis kung damo. Hypothesis if isa lang. They guide you. Number one, first bullet, they guide you in which aspect of the research to focus on. So hypothesis is there to give you a definite idea or what you call this, or to make you investigate your research based or within a certain domain. Right? So dapat may sukatan ka, nga dala lang gid ang focus mo. Right? And hypothesis could actually give you that. They provide, number two, they provide opportunities to prove the relationship between variables. So, as what we have discussed in the previous lessons, there are independent variables. And hypothesis could actually give you enlightenment and to make things clearer for your readers if what is the relationship of these variables. Right? So, amo na ang purpose ng hypothesis. They give the right direction of the research, and that is number three. They give the right direction of the research because if you have hypothesis, you have in your mind the goal or the question, okay, that you want to answer, right? That's why you're able to come up with a result, right? Next, they outline your thoughts on your manner of summarizing the results and of explaining the conclusions. They outline your thoughts. They organize your thoughts, okay? To make sure that your result later on in your conclusions, in your chapter 5, would be in a coherent manner. That's why for that to be correctly and properly summarized. All right? Next. And of course, to give a good and a proper conclusions, right? They, in the last one, they push for an empirical study to prove the existence of relationship of variables and the effects of the independent variable and the dependent variable. Take note that the independent variable, as what we have discussed in the previous videos, independent variable could actually be the cause, and dependent variable could receive the effect. Right? So independent cause, dependent effect. They push, and hypothesis could make this to be understood better, ang imong mga variables, because your hypothesis would tell you that, right? Kung sakto ang pagbutang mo sa hypothesis. Next, what are the two categories of hypothesis? First, we have null hypothesis, and we also have alternative hypothesis. A null hypothesis, okay, the first one. Let's discuss first the null hypothesis. And there are two categories, as what I've said, right? Null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. A null hypothesis is symbolized by HO, right? It is symbolized by HO, which states, a null hypothesis symbolized by HO states the absence of relationship. Take note, the absence of relationship between the independent and dependent variables. It is therefore a statement to disprove the fact that the independent variable, including treatment, intervention, or condition, has effect on the dependent variable. Alright? So, amo na ang null hypothesis. So, you just have to realize that the null hypothesis is there with the keyword absence. Right? Next, we have examples of null hypothesis. The consumption of the medicine does not reduce the chances of heart arrest. For example, ang study mo, Abe, the effect of the consumption of medicine to the chances of having heart attack. Amo na abi imo nga study for the first example here. Right? So, imo nga null hypothesis, which I said, would tell us about the absence, right? The absence of the effect of the independent variable to the dependent variable. So, imo nga null hypothesis would be the consumption of the medicine does not reduce the chances of heart arrest. If that is the case, ang does not the class would actually give you the idea that this is a null hypothesis, because it is an absence of something. Okay? So because of the word in the phrase does not, it means that it is telling us nga there is no effect of the consumption of medicine to having reduced chances of getting heart arrest or getting heart attack. Right? Example pa again. No more than 30% of the registered voters in Santa Clara County voted in the primary election. Imo nga claim be. Gina-claim mo be, okay? Gusto mo i-prove that there are actually 30% nga registered voters in Santa Clara who voted in the primary election. Because you are having a null hypothesis, it means the absence of something. It has to be negative. So that's why you are stating your hypothesis to be like this. No more than 30%. Alright? Kaya gin-disprove mo, or though opposite siya sa imo nga claim, which is 30% ang nag-vote. Okay? Because you are having a null hypothesis, mahambal ka gid yang no more than 30%. Alright, so I hope you're getting it. Next, what is naman an alternative hypothesis? Symbolized by HI, or it can actually be HA or H1. Alright? Again, HI, HA, or H1. Those can be the symbols of alternative hypothesis. The alternative hypothesis states the relationship between the independent and the dependent variables and the fact that the first affects the second one. So this one is um, could be on the positive side. Alright? Okay, ang example sa to, doon naging positive lang siya. Here, for example, there is a himuon ta alternative hypothesis ni, mambal kalambing nga the consumption of the medicine reduces the chances of heart arrest. Alright? Or you can say sa ikaduwa de, more than 30% of the registered voters, right? So do medyo opposite lang sa null hypothesis. Right? Because it means nga there is an effect on the dependent variable by the independent variable. Next, there are different types of hypothesis. First is the theory-driven versus data-driven hypothesis. A hypothesis that is based, okay, wait lang. Before we discuss that, choosing which type, let me just remind you that choosing which type of hypothesis to use depends solely on you, right? It depends on you as a researcher. It does not mean, however, that choosing one of the following types of hypothesis makes you come out with the best hypothesis, because no type of hypothesis is superior or is more than to any hypothesis. So you just have to remember that. Number one, let's go to the types of hypothesis. Number one, theory-driven versus data-driven hypothesis. A hypothesis that is based on existing theory to explain the relationship of variables and the effects of one variable on the other variables is what we call theory-driven. But if it is based on the findings of previous research studies, it is called a data-driven hypothesis. Alright? Number two, directional or one-tailed versus non-directional, or we have two-tailed hypothesis. It means that directional hypothesis state that the hypothesis class is plural and hypothesis nga I is singular. Alright? Hypotheses state the relationship of two variables as well as of the relationship of these variables. Non-directional hypotheses, on the other hand, state the relationship of variables but not on the direction of the relationship. Alright? Number three, we have descriptive versus causal hypothesis. A statement specifying the relationship between two variables due to the influence of something is what we call descriptive hypothesis. Due to cause-effect relationship, it is a causal hypothesis. Through experimental or quasi-experimental research, we have discussed that earlier on the previous videos, if what are the meanings of these researches, right? Such as a correlation study uses causal hypothesis. Non-experimental research uses descriptive hypothesis. All right? Next, guidelines in formulating your hypothesis. What are the things that you have to remember in formulating or making your hypothesis? First, express your hypothesis in a declarative sentence. It is very important that the hypothesis is always stated using declarative sentence. Alright? Support your hypothesis with ideas based on theories, known facts, previous studies, or your own experience and wisdom. Establish a logical relationship between the hypothesis and the research problem. Have your hypothesis predict the nature of relationship between or among variables. Next, number 5, ascertain the possibility of having some means of testing, analyzing, and investigating your hypothesis. And number 6, avoid wordiness by using clear, exact, or specific language in stating the hypothesis. Now, I will show you an example research study and an example hypothesis that they have. The link will be in the description box. So please access that document for you to better understand what is a hypothesis, right? That is ang ara ng ihatag ko nga description sa description box would contain a file, an example file of for chapter 1. Okay, chapter 1 para makita niyo yung hypothesis class. Right? So mahatag ko da at least mga tatlo kabilog nga example sang researches nga pwede ninyo masolusundan para mag-ubra ka mo sang inyo nga chapter 1 and chapter 2. Alright? So amo inang ihatag ko da. And ara man dira naka-state ang hypothesis. Alright? So though you just have to study more. Okay? Then I also shared with you some videos, di ba, nga pwede ninyo studyhan for you to better understand what is a hypothesis. Alright, so that would be all for lesson 7. I hope that you understood something, and if you have not answered yet on your M rooms, please make sure to answer in your M rooms already with the for the quiz in lesson 7. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you learned something about our discussion for the topic hypothesis. Good day, God bless, and good luck always, and keep safe, everybody. Thank you.